Welcome back, everybody. We are very pleased to have all of you with us. And as you can see from the title slide here, we're going to talk about next practices in job posting. Joining me for this particular presentation is Lindsay Stanton. She's the CEO of DigiMe and one of the smartest people in the talent technology field. And we're going to get to her part of the program in just a moment. But first, let's talk about job postings themselves. I suspect that when many of you first heard the title of this session, your eyes rolled into the back of your head. I mean, job postings are a pretty pedestrian topic. Since the dawn of online talent acquisition, job postings have been the lingua franca of online recruitment advertising. They've been the way that employers have conveyed their opportunities to job seekers on job boards and social media sites, on job aggregators and job search engines, in talent marketplaces, and today increasingly with programmatic ad buying platforms. So there is a problem, however. And that problem is that job postings today, at least as they're currently conceived, aren't working. In survey after survey, employers are reporting that they post jobs and they just can't get the talent that they need. So something's amiss. And what we're going to explore in this first part of the presentation is what that is and how we can remediate it. Okay, let's get into the session. If we can start through the slides. Hang on just a second while we get my presentation teed up.
Yeah, stand by for just a moment, Peter.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, for those who have never seen this device before, this piece of technology is called a typewriter. And it was used to transfer resumes, hiring manager job specs, interview notes onto a carbon-based medium called paper. It was a engineering marvel in the 1940s. It was an electric phenom in the 1970s, and today it is so obsolete as to be irrelevant. Now, I know some of you are rising up in righteous anger because you have a typewriter in your organization, and that's okay. But in the vast majority of cases, a typewriter is not used to create and transmit job postings. That's a good metaphor. Hang on just a second. Let's go back. That's a good metaphor for what we are about with the best practices in job posting. What we call the best practices in job posting today were developed back when job boards first came online in the mid-1990s. In the beginning, the best practices in job posting were all about taking the classified ad copy that appeared in newspapers and repurposing it online. After a couple of years, we realized that that actually wasn't the best practice. What we really needed to do is to provide much more content. So we began to move towards a best practice of using position descriptions to provide information in our job postings. A couple of years after that, we learned that, actually, that's not enough either. So we began to add some marketing content around the edges of the position descriptions. And we used really cool words like ninja and black belt to try to catch the attention of job seekers. And here we are in 2021, and those best practices are not working anymore. They're tired out. They're tired. They're worn out. They are the typewriters of online recruitment advertising. So let's talk a little bit about why that's the case. Why are job postings just not getting the job done? Next slide, please. There are really three reasons, and that's because job seekers, or excuse me, recruiters today are facing a new reality. And that new reality is defined by three dynamics, three major changes. The first, of course, was addressed beautifully by HD. The world of work has changed. COVID has introduced the phenomenon of remote work, and it has created a she-cession, a recession of women in the workforce. Many women left the workforce to take care of kids, to take care of parents, and the research shows that many of them are not ready yet to come back. So there is that dynamic going on. At the same time, there is the rising importance of social justice and the reality in many organizations that they need to do a better job, make a greater commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's no longer enough to simply put an EEO affirmative action statement at the bottom of your job posting and say that you have made a good faith effort to really build a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce. The second change has been in the labor market itself. We've talked a little bit about this at the very beginning, but it's best characterized as a world turned upside down. I mean, think about this. There are 11 million people currently unemployed in the US, so there's plenty of supply of talent. In the first quarter of 2021, according to a survey conducted by Appcast, a programmatic ad platform that looked at millions of job postings in Q1, demand for talent is up 20%. So you have supply up and you have demand up. In every other job market, that would have made for a lot of new hires, and yet that's not happening. Apply rates from job seekers are down 20%, and click-throughs to job postings are at historic lows. We just aren't connecting with the talent that we need. The labor market has changed. And finally, the perception of talent has also changed. I mean, we still believe, of course, that all talent has value, but increasingly we realize that high performers, the best talent, have a real, a discrete, a measurable difference in terms of performance value in the organization. Dr. John Sullivan did some research and found that there's been a number of studies which have tried to quantify this performance differential between high performers and everybody else, or let's say the average performer. He cited a study that was done by GE, Yahoo, and the University of Indiana, which found that high performers, the contribution that they make to an organization is 10 times greater than the contribution of an average performer. Apple did a study which found that the value of the contribution of high performers is 20 times greater than the contribution of an average performer. And Google did a study and came up with the conclusion that high performers, the best talent, are 300% more valuable than the average performer. So it's clear that high performers, the best talent, not only add a great deal to the organization themselves, they raise the performance of everybody else. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is that the war for talent has morphed. It's morphed from a focus on quantity and quality, of course, but to a laser-like focus on a war for the best talent. Employers that are able to recruit more than their fair share of those high performers are going to have a huge competitive advantage in the marketplace. Now, no recruiter comes into the office in the morning, sits down, pours himself a cup of coffee, sits down and says, today I'm going to recruit some mediocre performers. Of course not. Everybody does their best to try to bring in the very best talent possible. But the challenge is that the only way to connect with the best talent is to write a job posting that's explicitly, consciously, and fully designed just for them. What that means is that we have a new golden rule of recruiting. What you do to recruit the best talent will also recruit mediocre talent, but the converse is not true. In other words, aim high, recruit high. Aim anywhere else, and you're going to lose the war for the best talent. Now, why is that? Why is that? Well, the problem that we face in writing a job posting for the best talent is recognizing that they are different. They're not just average job seekers who are better than everybody else, but they are, in fact, different kinds of people. First of all, they never, ever think of themselves as a job seeker. Even when they're in transition, they don't view themselves that way. They believe that the term job seeker is disrespectful. They believe it implies that they are a supplicant of work, and they totally reject that position. To them, they believe that employers need them more than they need employers. They make a quantifiable difference, somewhere between 10 and 300% to an organization. And they want to be acknowledged for that difference. Second, they aren't interested in jobs. They never look for jobs. What they do look for, and almost constantly, is a career advancement opportunity. They want to find a position where they can advance in their quest to be the very best of a high performer they can be. They want to find an opportunity that will enable them to work with the best, to be the best, to continue to be that kind of contributor in their organization. Third, they don't care what employers care about. They don't care about a hiring manager's specs for a job. What they care about is what's in it for them. How can they grow? How can they be a better performer? How can they gain greater stature in their profession, craft, or trade? And finally, because most of them are employed, they see transition as really an exercise in change. They have to go from the devil they know, their current employer, their current boss, their current commute, to the devil they don't know, a new employer, a new boss, a new commute. And what we're finding today is that the best practices that we have used since 1995 simply can't convey a message with the power to address those differences. So let's talk about a solution to that particular problem. The position is to reimagine, or the solution, I should say, is to reimagine your job posting, not as a position description, not as classified ad copy, not as a sales brochure, but as a platform for CRM. But we're going to redefine CRM to mean candidate respect messaging. The message of the job posting is all about communicating respect. And in order to do that, it has to be explicitly designed for the best talent. Now, there are two components to conveying respect in a message. The first is that the message has to acknowledge that these high performers are unique. In other words, it has to use information that it has to provide information that they value, and it has to use vocabulary they prefer in presenting that information. Secondly, because most high performers are employed, they believe that their time is valuable. So they are not willing to fight through the thick, pithy paragraphs of position descriptions and so forth. They want to be able to access the message quickly and easily. That's how you acknowledge their uniqueness. The second attribute of candidate respect messaging is that you treat these high performers as an equal. They aren't a supplicant for work, but instead they are an equal to the organization. So really what we're trying to do is to convey a sense of partnership. So a Nexxt job posting has an entirely different kind of structure in order to convey that sense of partnership. And finally, every job posting historically has set standards for the job seeker, for the applicant. These are the things you're going to have to do. These are the skills that you have to bring to the table. And what a Nexxt job posting does is also set standards for the employer, again, to reinforce that sense of partnership, that sense of equality between the organization and the candidate. So let's talk about each of those in more detail. Acknowledging the uniqueness of a high performer. Really, the key here is to focus not on the information that we typically provide in a job posting. In fact, most high performers view the words requirements and responsibilities as terms only a hiring manager could love. What they want to know is the answer to 5 questions. They want you to tell them what will they get to do, not talking about the tasks they will have to perform, but instead the work they will do and why that work is important and valued by the organization. What will they get to learn? How will they be able to grow by performing this particular role in the organization? What will they get to accomplish? How will they be able to achieve new heights in their profession, craft, or trade? With whom will they get to work? They believe that they are best able to be at their best, to do their best work when they are challenged and working with other high performers. And here's an opportunity to make the case that high performers are really found in all facets of the workforce. So it's a way to re-emphasize the organization's commitment to DE&I. And finally, how will they be recognized and rewarded? How will they gain in stature and in income? High performers don't work for money, but they do view money as a way to measure their progress. The other thing that helps to acknowledge their uniqueness is to recognize the value of their time. You know, they're busy people. They're employed and contributing to their current employer. So the best way to provide this content, again, is not in the thick, pithy paragraphs of a position description, but rather in headlines and bullets so that the eye can quickly scan the content and get its value proposition. And also the content should be provided in a way that's consistent with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. For those of you that may not know, these guidelines were developed by the World Wide Web Consortium initially to make sure that web content, and in this case, job postings, were accessible by people with disabilities. But now they have expanded to also include making sure that this content, job postings, are accessible from a mobile device, because after all, that's in many cases the way candidates and prospects are accessing this content. Next slide. And a Nexxt Practice job posting also treats high performers as an equal. It uses an entirely new structure to convey that sense of partnership. First of all, it's divided into 3 sections, each of which is specifically titled. So the title of the first section is Our Opportunity. Our Opportunity. This is the hook. It's a short, hard-hitting paragraph and bullets, which really focus on the single most important aspect, the single most important factor that will convince a high performer to say yes to your opportunity. How do you know what that factor is? Well, you certainly aren't going to get it from the hiring manager. The best way to figure out what to emphasize in the hook is to talk to other high performers in your organization to understand what got them to say yes when they were offered an opportunity by your organization. This particular section also uses the plural pronoun our. Yes, it talks about the employer's opportunity, but that term our also begins to build the sense, the subliminal message that we're talking about something that we can do together to create that sense of partnership. The middle section, the vast majority of the job posting, is a section entitled What's in It for You, explicitly acknowledging that what we have to do is tell high performers how this job posting is going to advance them in their profession, craft, or trade. This is where you answer those 5 questions, where you tell them what they're going to do, what they're going to learn, what they're going to get to accomplish, whom they're going to work with, and how they will be recognized and rewarded. And again, that information is conveyed not in thick, wordy paragraphs, but rather in headlines and bullets. And finally, the last section, the call to action, is entitled The Options You Have. And you give them 3 options. First, you give them the option, obviously, to apply. That's the best outcome. But secondly, in many cases, the job posting won't be right for them. Either the timing is off or there's not a good fit for the job. So what you want them to do is to refer the opening to somebody else if they think they know someone who might be interested in the job. The wonderful thing about high performers is that they know other high performers. So you want to encourage them to refer the opportunity if it's not right for them. And finally, you want to encourage them to stay in touch with you. You want to make sure that they have the opportunity to opt into your recruitment marketing campaign so that you can begin to build a relationship with them. Finally, the ad sets standards and holds employers to them. HD touched on this. It's very important to let them know something as simple as how long it takes to complete the application. You might say, for example, in your job posting, we know you're busy and want to be respectful of your time. So we've designed our application form to be completed in 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever the case may be, and in multiple sittings. So you're telling them that you recognize that their time is valuable, and you're going to hold yourself to a standard in terms of creating an application form that doesn't take too long to complete. And as HD mentioned, you also want to tell them what happens next and when it will happen. In other words, here's how long it's going to take us to review your ads, and we will get back to you with the information on your status by X time, so that they have a sense of when to expect to hear back from you. Okay, lots of other information that we could cover in a Nexxt practice job posting, but I think it's important at this point just to emphasize that you've told them what they want to know, not the information that you get in terms of the specs from the hiring manager, but information configured in a way that answers their 5 most important questions. Secondly, you've made your message accessible for them so that their time is respected. And third, you've shown that you appreciate their value by holding the organization, the employer, to standards as well as them. And that in toto creates respect. Now, we can do all of this in writing, of course, but equally as powerful is to do it with visual images and with video. And for that, I'm going to turn the program over to my friend and colleague, Lindsay Stanton. Lindsay?
Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for having me. So looking forward to sharing some information with you guys today. I think today couldn't be any more timely when I'm not sure if everybody saw it, but on our news feed through Apple News this morning, they actually released an article about why companies can't hire. I feel like nothing puts an exclamation point on the challenges in our industry other than Apple being able to make an announcement that we all have a challenge in front of us. I'm not sure if you have my slides, or do you guys want me to share my screen?
Please share your screen, Lindsay.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to talk to you, as Peter mentioned, about video in our space. And hang on, sorry, having a challenge. There we go. Okay, So obviously, leveraging digital has never been more important than it is today. And it was great to hear HD mentioning kind of the job preview or telling your story through a digital format, because absolutely we're seeing that that's a game changer. I feel like COVID put a huge explanation point on the fact that we can, in fact, be virtual and still high touch. I think that's really important. Not only has everything migrated to Zoom and online and social, I feel like we're permanently going to have a blend of this now. I feel like every organization has started to realize that they can in fact be virtual, which is really important, because when we talk about the squeeze on talent and trying to attract the right people, being virtual obviously hugely deepens our reach and talent pool in a way that we haven't experienced traditionally. Even industries that are more conservative in their approach and more traditional in nature have made the adjustment. They were forced to make the adjustment during COVID. And I feel like now, they see that they actually can function and function really well, in some cases actually even better than they did when they were in person. So digital definitely helps us to be able to do that in an effective, high touch way. I'm going to talk to you about the impact of going digital, from your job postings to your messaging to your outreach to your screening. Absolutely being able to enhance the ability to sell your story, not just the position itself. As Peter mentioned, it's really, in order to reach those right people, the high level talent, you definitely need to enhance your game and enable the candidates to assist you and do a lot of the work for you, which we're definitely going to talk about. So why go video in your job posting? What kind of impact is it going to have? Number one, you are empowering the candidates, those high performers that Peter was mentioning, to share your messaging for you. So not only are you hitting them in a much more effective, compelling way, but you're enabling them to push the message for you. So just out of the gate to mention, candidates learn and retain about 70% more when they watch a video job posting versus, I always say, reading in air quotes, because as Peter mentioned, that, boring, repetitive text. I know so many job descriptions have the same information multiple times throughout it. Definitely is not going to translate to the audience that you're trying to reach. So just out of the gate, candidates will learn and retain about 70% more when they watch and listen to a job description versus reading it. So that's absolutely huge, because you're going to be able to get across all that critical messaging. One thing that we highly recommend for the organizations that we work with globally is selling your story as part of the job posting. It's not just about the job itself, but including in that messaging, even when it is job specific, a little bit of information about your company, the culture, what differentiates you, kind of the hook that we've heard consistently throughout today's sessions. Really important just to draw them in, because if you don't get their attention out of the gate, you've already lost. So it's really important to sell what differentiates you, even at the job posting level. We do a lot of work with our clients around company culture. Certainly, we're doing a lot around diversity and inclusion as part of that messaging right now, as well as military recruiting, as organizations are trying to, deepen their talent pools and reach specifically targeted groups through key messaging. But even at the job level, being able to include information about your company and your culture, which is much easier to do in a digital footprint than text, is really, really important. And if you tell your story in a compelling way, it's going to create engagement both through Google and deeper SEO, as well as just at the candidate level. So just to give a little bit of information, I know both HD and Peter talked about calls to action. Calls to action are so important. As Peter mentioned, obviously the ultimate end game is to get them to apply to the position. But I think, another really really great goal is to give them the power to share your messaging and have the ability to track where those shares occur. So just to give a little insight into the power of social and social sharing, organic candidate-driven traffic through our platform equates to about 60% of the applicant flow. It's the highest converter for our clients for hire, but it's about 60% of the applicant flow, whether it's a senior software engineer all the way to a part-time hourly role for a warehouse position. We're without a doubt seeing the candidates actively engage in video content, share the messaging, and then ultimately the employers can track that and understand where exactly they're getting those candidates from so that you can reach those more targeted talent pools. You can hit those high performers through the sites that they're already on, which is largely social, even down to the granular level of like a specific Facebook group or Twitter hashtag or career site, wherever they might be wherever they might be finding your messaging, understanding that and allowing the data to take you where those talent pools are living and being able to understand. The other thing I would mention is short is the name of the game. So we track duration of video job view, and across all of our video products, we track the candidate engagement and duration of view. On the job side, you want to sit right around 50 to 60 seconds. 60 seconds is kind of the sweet spot for keeping candidates engaged. You can go a little bit longer when you're talking about company and culture. Average YouTube view is just under 2 minutes, but we see with our client cultural videos, usually about 1.5 to 2 minutes is kind of that sweet spot. We love to pair company culture messaging with job videos. It has a multiplying effect on the SEO. So just the fact that you've integrated video into your job postings on your client's behalf is going to drive up the SEO 53 times. We actually just did a really great review with one of our customers who has same position in a ton of locations. They've got about 10 core job functions that they hire for in about 500 markets throughout the US. And it's really interesting to see the SEO impact of the videos was tremendous. They had over 100 keywords driving them to the first page of Google, which is just awesome because not only was it driving traffic at a job specific level, but it also was integrating location. So another thing that definitely is going to help you get better conversion and pull candidates into your job is for them to really truly understand that you are indeed hiring where they are located. People are less likely to respond to a generic national ad than they are to a location specific ad, which is actually relatively easy to do in a video format. So what we do for our clients is create automation around duplicating their positions in a variety of markets. It makes the ease of turning up thousands of job videos pretty instant for them and gives them that enhanced SEO and tracking at a location level. So the job seeker behavior is very different from one market to the next. So you need to understand what the data is showing you in each market and understand how you need to react to that. We also will join up cultural messaging with job specific messaging. So candidates have an opportunity to understand not just the job itself, but the company behind it, which is going to help them before they interview with you to understand a little bit more information about the company so that they're speaking from a more educated perspective and do better when they're going through those interviews. But it's also going to deepen their commitment to understanding the company and the fact that they would fit within your culture. So they're more likely to stick with the process. One of the number one challenges, obviously, in our space right now is issues with ghosting and not understanding the devil, to use Peter's term, that they're opting into is a big reason why candidates ghost. So the more information you can give them on the front end of the process, the less likely you are to experience any type of drop off during the process. So that's really important, and it just helps the candidates make it through and experience less drop off and less cost to you, which is another reason why having a call to action to share content out, whether it's your brand messaging or your job messaging, is really important, because you instantly multiply the reach and at no cost. So with that social sharing driving 70% of our client video views and about 60% of their applicants, that's deepening the reach of the organization's key messaging without any cost. We've even started to partner with programmatic providers in the space to assist with high volume positions, as well as jobs that just need an additional lift, which is a lot of positions right now. But to be able to, deepen that reach, especially from a social perspective, so that you can get an additional lift just off the candidate's organic behavior. And then ultimately, it's all about the data. So I feel like we're kind of almost going back to the 2008 timeframe for different reasons, of course, but where data is king, and organizations absolutely require it. At this point in time, it's not necessarily to prove spend and worthiness of spend like it was in 2008, but ultimately it is to understand where they can actually acquire talent and meet their business needs. So understanding not just the sourcing information for the tools that you're currently leveraging, but understanding where the candidates are pulling you. And with our patented video player, for example, our clients are able to track not just the source of all the candidate behavior, but the time of day, the day of the week that's best for them to release their jobs, to drive conversion, where they're getting the best application conversion from, including at the granular level of like a specific social site or group, which is so key, and understanding their geographical reach. So how deep your reach is in a certain market, and being able to tie that back to the apply ratio and the conversion. We also do track, as Peter mentioned, mobile is obviously expected nowadays, but it's interesting to see that certain job titles, certain locations tend to skew really low on mobile when you wouldn't necessarily expect it. And then other instances where it's 90+% of the traffic. So understanding that so that you can simplify the application process, to his point, kind of make it digestible, especially if the candidates are coming in off of mobile and you don't want to increase any hurdles. You want to make it as easy as possible of a process. And then ultimately taking that data and being able to track it back to hire, which we're able to partner with our clients to do, so that they really understand the true conversion that they're getting, even at that social level. We've been able to assist organizations in making the business case to expand their reach through social, for instance, because the organic traffic just absolutely justified it and told the story. And I would say that it can be actually very easy and turnkey to add video to your recruiting process. You don't necessarily need to worry about, getting your people on video or having a big production process. We've actually released a tool that's fully automated that allows organizations within a very short time frame to turn up video job postings and be able to share their story. The other tool that we're seeing a lot of organizations shift to is virtual events. So we have created a video enabled virtual events platform, especially for organizations that need to hire super high volume very quickly. We're seeing them integrate the video job tools, the cultural video tools, and then do one-on-one interviews with prospective candidates on the spot, which has been extremely helpful for a lot of organizations in being able to hire really, really quickly, especially if they're hiring across a variety of markets in a very short window of time. The virtual events can be huge. We certainly are starting to already see the trend that companies are going to continue these virtual events. Some are starting to partner them with in-person events either before or after, but I think the virtual events are here to stay, as they've definitely increased our ability to reach a large volume of people much easier than being stuck to one specific geographical location. So has the need to reach deeper talent pools and broader groups of talent persist. This is definitely here to stay, in my opinion, and definitely from what I'm seeing with the other organizations in the space. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Peter, and see if there's any questions.
We do actually have a couple, Lindsay, and we will certainly welcome any more that people would like to submit. We have a couple of minutes. The first question we have is, how long does it take to create the kind of video job ad you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're kind of going deep and creating completely custom content for an organization where they're submitting brand guidelines and things like that, we're typically looking at about a week and a half to build them a fully custom video library. But with the automated tool that I mentioned, you're looking at hours. So we literally can turn up hundreds of job videos in less than 24 hours, which is pretty awesome because it helps organizations to be able to leverage that type of reach really quick and very inexpensively through the automated technology.
Okay, and here's another one. How do the videos work if you can't show a client brand?
Yeah, great question. So we just see this a lot. We work pretty heavily in staffing, and then we do have some partners that are like job board technology providers in the space where they don't have an opportunity to show their client's brand really at all, especially on the staffing side. That's not a problem. Our team has thousands of hours of content specific to individual types of positions that we can use to create the video job ads and turn the positions up very quickly. It's interesting. We've done some really great data analysis, side-by-side comparison of heavily branded client video jobs versus the ones that we create when we don't have much content to leverage from the client. And the data is just as great for both. So the candidates are clearly saying, hey, we like these videos, and the authenticity or customization of the branding seems to be less important because the data is definitely showing just as high of conversion and sharing when we're doing custom versus non-custom.
Okay. And then looks like there's one here for me. Recruiters are busy. So how do you handle the time involved in creating a next practice job posting? That too is a great question. There's no doubt about the fact that it takes a fair amount of creative talent and energy to create a next practice job posting. But I think the key here is to see it as an asset, as an organizational asset for your employers. Because once it's developed, it can serve as a template for all of the other job postings. At that point, once you get familiar with the structure, the format, the way the questions are answered, then it's not all that much more time consuming. And certainly it has much more power, much more appeal, much more engagement for the high performers that we're all trying to connect with. Okay, well, Lindsay, I think that's our allotted time. Thank you very much for joining me here today.